Cloud. Hi, and welcome to the Proactive Caring Home and School Exchange. My name is Dr. Larry Force, and I'm a professor of psychology at Mount St. Mary College. And along with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Jeffrey Kahana, we are directors of the Center on Aging and Disability Policy at Mount St. Mary College. We've been here before. As we were talking offline before we started to record, the reason we're here is because of the support of New York State Developmental Disability Planning Council. The DDPC have been tremendous partners. They funded us for a 3-year grant 4 years ago, and that was to be able to reach out to over 1,000 families to be able to train caregivers with mindfulness-based stress reduction. The partnership that we've developed with them has been supportive, has been wonderful. And we applied for another RFP and received it, and that's why we're here now. The focus is on transition. Some of you know the players at the table. Some of you are joining us tonight for the first time, and some of you will be just viewing this in your own space. Elaine Sprode is here, and she is the project director. And Elaine and I have known each other for 30 years. Peggy Pisano and Lisa Nathan have taken. Look, when COVID came, it was an upside down world. And you've heard us say this to you privately, but let us say it again and again and again publicly. The two of you, by coming together and giving voice as advocates from different perspectives, but giving a voice as a unified advocate, we didn't know how to do this, okay? Because we weren't able to assemble people. And because of COVID, we had to pivot, and we pivoted really well. Another player that's been with us for a long time is Stacy Orzell. We're so glad that Stacy is here. She is a parent through lived experience. She's the advocate. If you look up the word advocacy in a dictionary, and I kid you not, you're gonna see her face because she is unbelievable. She really, really is unbelievable. Other members, just getting to know, Corinne McPeters is joining us from Columbia University. And she is an intern for social work, and she's an intern for my dear friend Sharon Mary Cohen, who's the executive director of Jewish Family Services. And Sharon asked if there was a way that we could, use this platform as an opportunity for Corinne, and the answer is yes. Other people that are here on the video cast tonight for the first time, I'm getting to know Clifford and Patty and Ramona, and we're so glad you're able to join us. And again, we started off with a mailing list of just shy of 400. We have thousands of people on our mailing list now. So we know that this is working. We're reaching a lot of people. Our digital resource center, AKA website, is proactivecaring.org. Every month, Elaine puts up a newsletter. This video will be on our website, as well as it will be on our YouTube channel. But tonight, we are so glad to have Brian Orzell here with us. Brian comes highly recommended from different platforms. Brian, I'm going to ask you at some point in about a minute or so if you would be able to introduce yourself and give us a sense of how you arrived here. But the topic tonight is uncertain school times again, remaining calm and stress-free during another transition. And the way that it'll work is that we're going to start with, tell us how you ended up here. And then Lisa and Peggy are going to act as facilitators because they're looking at it from different perspectives. And then we're going to open this up for everyone. It's not a talking head presentation. So Brian, thank you so much. And welcome to the Proactive Caring Home and School Exchange.
Thank you, Larry. So actually our topic is a little different tonight. I actually have a PowerPoint, if I can share that and kind of use that as my background, and that will help me to do the couple of things you asked me to do, introduce myself, tell you how I got here.
Okay, you're now a co-host.
Okay, let me see if I can make this happen. All right, let's just take a moment.
Now, there's a couple of people in these pictures. I just want to say there's a couple of people in these pictures that look very familiar to us. Okay.
Yes, you may recognize a few folks. So this has been in the works, I guess, for a couple of months, and we went back and forth a little bit, try to determine, what would be a good topic for me based on, my experience, my story. And we arrived at this idea of how does one find their voice as a parent of a child with special needs? So I am also a parent of a child with special needs. Um, Again, I'm Stacy's husband, and got a couple of pictures here of our family. On the left-hand picture is a picture of me and our two boys. Jason's on the right. Jason's a high school senior this year, about to turn 18 pretty soon. And on the left of that picture with his thumbs up, that's our younger son, Eric, who will be 15 in a couple of months. He's a freshman in high school. So Eric is our child with special needs. Now, in the other picture is both of our boys and Stacy. So I wanted to be able to show, the whole thing. We didn't, someone's got to take the picture. So it's hard to get all four of us in the same image. So I wanted to make sure that everyone was represented. Okay. So I'm going to first talk about my job, but before I do that, I just have to make a disclaimer. Tonight, I'm speaking as a private individual, a citizen, not as this guy that I'm about to explain who that guy is. For the past, I don't know, decade or more, probably closer to actually about 17 years now, I've worked at Duchess Bosse's in Poughkeepsie. Also, I'm a grant guy too. I work on, through grants. And although I'm employed by Duchess Bosse's, I really do work for the state education department. So in one version or the other over these years, I have been a trainer of special educators. My role is more attached to topics having to do with regulations, procedures, things like that. I specialize in training CPSE and CSE chair people. IEP development is also probably my other big topic, and I dabble in other sorts of topics, that spin off of that. So the current grant that I'm under is known as the New York State Office of Special Education Educational Partnership. And my group in particular is called the Mid-Hudson Regional Partnership Center. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that is at the end of the presentation. So in other words, I've been doing professional development work in special education for, I think, 16 or 17 years now in our Mid-Hudson region. So that's Ulster County, Dutchess, Orange, and Sullivan. So again, here's my contact information for my day job. I'm originally a social worker by trade, and so I'll get into that in just a second. So as I was thinking about how to tell part of my story, I had this idea of something I saw in a presentation recently that showed a timeline of events. And I thought, oh, that was kind of cool. Let me kind of go with that. So I put this together, and Stacy liked it. She gave me some input, and so all right, let's go with that. So I'll start with went to college, was a psych major, and when I got out of school, actually moved to the Hudson Valley for the first time living up here. And I was in the mental health field, a lot of day treatment. I worked for Dutchess County. I had a bachelor's degree, so it's just trying to find my way. And, I did a lot of stuff. I was the guy that drove those people in the van to the mall on Wednesday. And, I was out in the community with clientele and, provided support that way. Over time, that morphed into wanting to pursue social work. When I went to school for psychology, I found I didn't really understand what psychologists were. I'll date myself. I'm thinking Bob Newhart, right? From the Bob Newhart show, right? Group therapy, wacky patients, have a few laughs. I don't know. That's what I thought. So I got to college and no, that's not it. Put on your lab coat. Oh, well, I'm not so good with numbers. So it took me a while to kind of figure out which direction to go in. So I eventually learned about social work. And I went to social work school in the early 90s. And while I was doing that, I actually got into special education backwards. I started working at a couple of different programs down on Long Island, which is where Stacy's from. We had gotten together by this point, providing counseling support for college-age people with disabilities, right? So I always say I got into it backward. I started at the top, and I'm kind of working my way down. So that was a great eye-opener, and it really started my whole career in special education. In 1994, I graduated school, and Stacy and I got married that year, right? Again, we were living on Long Island. I think it's 27 years now. I think we counted recently, right? So I did that for a while, and then kind of out of the blue, I answered an ad for professional development at Eastern Suffolk BOCES, which is out in Suffolk County. And now I didn't really know much about professional development, but they're looking for someone that had mental health experience, which I did. I was educational, so I had some of that. And I was called in, and I got the job, and it really changed the whole trajectory of my life. I've been in this network since that 2002 in one version or another. As it turns out, working in education, doing professional development isn't that much different than social work. People have problems. They rely on you. They're looking for guidance, some advice, and like I can do all that. I've learned a lot along the way. So that was cooking along pretty well. And then Stacy and I decided it was we were going to start our family. Jason was born in 2003. Eric was born in 2006. Stacy and I were separated for a while geographically because I had recently taken a job up here in the Hudson Valley. She was still home in Long Island with a youngster, a baby on the way, trying to sell our home during the bubble. I was up here working, sleeping on people's couches, trying to find a house. So it was kind of a rocky time just because of all those factors. And we persevered. Sort of as we were able to move up here, and around 2008, our pediatrician made an offhand comment to Stacy one day about, Eric's not really babbling the way that you might expect a child of that age to do that. You may want to have him evaluated. So as it turned out, our son Jason also had a similar situation when he was young. So we were familiar with, contacting the county. People come over to your house, they perform some evaluations, take some survey questions, and tell you about services that are available. So we're familiar with that. So that happened, and I'll never forget this day. It's just seared into my mind. For some reason, Eric was kind of crabby that day. He is a child, besides having autism, he's have several food allergies, and as a baby, it took us a while to find out that he was having allergies to foods and things. And so he had, eczema. He wasn't sleeping well. As a result, Stacy wasn't sleeping well. It was kind of tough. We finally discovered what was going on, and we were able to make adjustments, and that worked out really, really well. So Eric was a little crabby that day. These 5 ladies descend upon our home. One's got a big bag of toys. There's all kinds of paperwork flying around. He's sitting on the floor. They're talking to him. They're talking to us. All kinds of stuff's going on. Well, he's not doing this. Well, I put all these toys in front of him. He wasn't able to differentiate or, take one. I said, well, you dumped the whole bag in front of him. Like, what are you talking about? So it's a lot of stuff going on. Sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here. Okay, you'll hear from us soon. Oh, and by the way, as they're walking out the door, your child has 5 flags for autism. Boom. What just happened? I'm thinking speech delay. They're saying autism. Now, again, this is only screeners or just some, like, what? So we're kind of hanging out for like 10 minutes and just sort of silence, stunned. I was stunned. And those of you know Stacy will connect with what I'm about to say. And about 10 minutes later, she's like, okay, what do we do next? Let's go. Okay, buckle up, here we go. And that began our entree into early intervention, eventually preschool. Eric didn't have a diagnosis right away, though. One of our speech providers that worked with us was excellent. Joel was his name. He recommended a particular autism screen, the MCHAT, I believe it was. I can't remember, as a while ago. And so we pursued that, and that really opened up, a neuropsychological diagnosis, and like, okay, yeah, probably autism. And then that kind of started a whole nother journey of, okay, so now we have a better idea of maybe what we're coping with. We know we can have some ideas on how to deal. Eric had 3 years of preschool. He went to the Center for Spectrum Services, did really well there. They were fantastic with him. And we both feel that as a result of that early program, he has been in our public school buildings ever since kindergarten. So he was able to be in our regular school district. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, he is now a freshman in high school, doing high school stuff. Like, wow. I mean, he's got his issues. He is a child with autism, and he's also doing a lot of fairly typical things. So it's pretty amazing. So that's kind of how I got here. All right, so let's move on here. All right, so what's funny is Larry was Stacey, did you want to jump in?
I was just going to add that Eric has done a great job being a student throughout his career, but it's important to note that he struggles with a lot of things. So as a student and a learner, we've worked really hard communicating with his teachers. So I want to encourage the parents that are watching this video, therapists and other teachers, to have a great understanding that there's a phrase that says, when you've met a child with autism, you've met one child with autism, and they're all different, just like people, really. And some of Eric's greatness is his memorization. And so when he comes to a short video he needs to watch and then answer questions about it, I've given strategy to teachers and himself, Eric, to make sure he watches that video 2 or 3 times before answering the questions, because he has a very amazing memorization capability. But it wasn't until that we discovered where his strengths are to help him navigate where his challenges lie. So he needs material broken down into smaller parts. He needs lessons in repetition. He doesn't like doing homework at home. He wants to only do work in school. That's schoolwork. So there are things that, and he doesn't have very good flexibility. His executive functioning skills challenge him to not be able to think in layers. He's a surface thinker. So he wants to do the schoolwork at school. But over time, with repetition and a lot of encouragement, parent buddy time, or time with his big brother, who's an amazing student, he's come to embrace being able to study for a test. And he has he's got the acceptance that studying will help me do better. And over time, he's become okay with that. But it's a work in progress and a lot of practice. And you got to have a lot of patience, which definitely should be all part of a definition for a child with autism. I'm sure my friend Lisa is nodding her head along with us here. So anyway, yeah, I just kind of wanted to say that, as great as Eric is doing, and we're so proud of all his progress, it takes a lot of work to get there. And he is in a smaller class. For anybody wondering, it's a 15 or less amount of students. And he works with an aide to make sure he stays on track. And we do a tremendous amount of communicating with his team, which has been great. And that goes both ways. The best carryover for any child to all parents, you'll find, is when you have a relationship with the educators, the therapists, the home, the communication, and then rolling that into the community. Go ahead, Bri.
Thanks, Tay. So Larry was introducing, the definition of the word advocate, I was suddenly inspired. Oh, there she is. There's a picture of Stacy under the definition of advocate. Did that really quickly during the introduction.
Absolutely.
But I was really thinking, I never thought of myself as an advocate. It's, I struggle with that. I've chaired meetings as a chairperson. And in that world, sometimes the word advocate actually sort of has a negative connotation. You hear that a lot in schools, like, oh, that advocate, she was bossing everyone around. She thinks she knows everything. So I was kind of shied away from that. And, as I was preparing for this, Stacy and I were talking about that. And I kind of turned it around. I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I am an advocate. So what's the definition? One who pleads the case of another. Yes, I do that too. I do it in a different way than Stacy does. But we both do that, right? So that's a noun. Like the verb is, to support or argue for a cause, or to act as an advocate for someone. So there's different ways to look at this word. Advocacy can be life-changing, or it can be a bad reputation. It just depends on how you approach it. So I've come to think of myself more as an advocate in terms of, supporting a cause, pleading for a cause within the parameters of how the system works. And that's kind of my angle. So I'm going to get into that in a second. So the original phrase actually is knowledge itself is power. And Sir Francis Bacon said that back in 1597. That's where that originally came from. In our house, it's knowledge is power. Stacy says this all the time. This is like a real central idea for her, that if you are informed, then you know what to do, or at least you have a better idea of what to do. But first you have to learn. I also believe in that idea. So I'm a social worker by trade. The first thing they taught me in social work school is learn the system, use the system. That set my whole frame. If you know what the rules are, you know how to play the game, then you can play the game. You can work within it. You can make it work for you. So, but you have to know what it is. So that was important for me. Now, I'm not a real mystical spiritual guy per se, but I always have this thought in the back of my head that perhaps the reason that I fell into this career and learned all this stuff about how special education works from that, procedural point of view is because someday I was going to need that information for my own child. Take that any way that you like, but it just seems like that sometimes. And thank goodness. Go ahead, Say.
I went to a training probably when Eric was maybe 3 or 4, and a great role model and mentor of mine, a wonderful gal who was on the startup of early intervention in New York State, Margaret Sampson, resting in peace at this time, taught me that special children choose special parents, and said straight out to me that Eric chose us to be his parents. So the spiritual side in me believes that as within your yin yang, honey. I like that that concept. So I wanted to share that and empower any parents watching our talk tonight that your special child chose you to be their parent.
So now, if knowledge is power, then what I've come to learn on both sides of the table, as a chairperson, as a parent, as an educator, the way that this works best is you have to know how to ask questions. You don't have to always have the answers, but you need to seek them for your own understanding. And then again, with that knowledge, I have more power. So how do I ask questions? How do I then put ideas on the table? So now we're talking about really collaborating. How do I collaborate with the people I need to speak with? So Stacy mentioned a few minutes ago how the communication between us and his teachers has always been a very strong thing. It's very regular, it's pretty constant, and it's collaborative. And I think both sides view it that way. Like, Oh, she's giving us good ideas. Oh, you guys are involved. We appreciate that. Well, we appreciate what you're doing. Let's work together. So really, again, this idea of knowledge is power. You need to learn, and then you can make things happen. All right, so I'm going to get a little more personal here. I think, see how this goes. So finding my voice. So I play in a couple of different bands, and I've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to have my kids participate with us at some of our gigs. Jay's in the background here. I wasn't able to find a good picture with the three of us together, but he's back there too. And Eric usually comes up and sings Give Me Some Lovin', which is the encore that my band plays pretty often. So this idea of, here we are, we're out there, we're talking, we're speaking to our audience, we're finding our voice. So I had to learn about autism. And as Stacy said a few minutes ago, it's not autism, it's his autism versus her autism and that other kid's autism and that other kid's autism, right? Learn very specifically, what is my child good at? Where do they struggle? What do they need? What can they do? Why is he so darn funny? He's a really funny kid. Like, I had to really learn about him and his particular autism. So, now I'm learning about my child. I know my child, but now I have to really learn about him more so that I can think of, well, I'm seeing where he's struggling. I see where he's strong. I can use that information to further support for him. My job gave me the window to understand the special education process. Now, I'm not a special education teacher. I'm not a classroom guy, but I know what's supposed to happen at that meeting. I know where to look up answers. I know what should happen. Where can I find out more about these things that should be happening? So somehow those things all came together for me. And when it comes to my own meetings with Eric, annual review meetings, let's say, I'm that guy. I know how this should work. Now, fortunately, for the most part, in our district, things go as they are supposed to, as per regs. I mean, maybe there's a few things here and there that aren't quite kosher, but we still can work with it. So for me, I'm the kind of guy that lives in my head. I'm not really an action guy so much. Stacy's an action person. So again, that's our yin yang. But even I had to learn to take all this information, this knowledge, this procedural stuff, observation of characteristics of my son, and put it all together and take action. I'm not afraid to take action. I feel confident because I have background information. I'm also, some people might say I'm opinionated. I like to think of it as I have opinions on that. Let me share mine with you. Here it comes. What do you think? Let me hear what you have to say. I like some of that. Okay, how can we work together? So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So again, my experience is really more with school age and preschool age kids. So I don't have experience at the adult level so much. So I'm kind of frame it from that perspective. If you're a parent of a child with a disability and you're participating in either the preschool process or the school age process where we are developing an IEP, we're making plans for next year, it's really important that parents understand that they are also members of that committee. In my office, we talk about this often where we find ourselves constantly saying, well, the committee recommended this and the parent agreed or disagreed. And we look at each other like, well, wait a minute, no, we just separated them, didn't we? It's not the committee and the parent. It's the committee, which includes the parent as an equal member. And it's really important to realize that you have every right to be here. IDEA actually guarantees your right as a parent to participate in decisions about services, placement, the provision of special education. And we can't stress that enough. As a parent, you're a member, and be one. Like, go, step up, and here you go. So what do? Ask questions. ask for explanations. I think that one's maybe even more important. All right, so you guys are kind of suggesting he should go into a class like this. Please explain to me how this will address the needs that we talked about a few minutes ago. Like specifically, I always tell parents, I don't work with that many parents, but when I do, I say, have them explain it to you. They have to sell you. This will do this. This thing will support that need. That's why we're recommending this. And if those answers are not forthcoming, keep asking for them. Like, well, wait a minute, I'm not really sure how this is going to help him. Explain it to me again. You have to sell me. And if you can do that, we're in agreement. Also, share your own ideas. Well, I hear what you're saying. And here's a thought that I had. You know, at home, we use this strategy and it works really well. How would that translate into a school setting? Oh, I think that would work really well. Right? Stacy, how many times have we actually given teachers ideas either at an annual review meeting or during the year, and they took it and ran with it? And then vice versa. They tell us what we can do at home. And it becomes, again, this collaborative cycle. But we all created that by engaging in that process. All right, so now I'm going to get technical for a second. I'm actually going to show you a memo. How exciting is that? This should come up in a second. With any luck. Okay, here we go.
Hey, honey, for anyone in the audience that doesn't know, can you just say out loud what the acronym for the IDEA is, please?
The IDEA stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which was first created back in 1975. It was actually called the Education of the Handicapped Act of 1975. And that's really when special education in public schools started. Over time, these federal legislations get looked at, again, revised, reauthorized is the term that they use for that. So this is the federal legislation that governs special education. All right, so what you see here is a memo. This is back from 2014. This was during the time when New York State and many other states were rolling out the Common Core learning standards. There was a lot of confusion around that when that happened for teachers, for parents, for everybody. And the state education department put out this memo, and there's a companion memo to this as well. We're going to just look at this one for a minute. Trying to help parents understand this new Common Core thing. All right, so there's some good stuff in here. There's a glossary of terms. I'm going to scroll here. So if this bothers your eyes, maybe just look away for a second. Glossary of terms. But the most important thing is what you see here and on the next page. I'd never seen anything like this before from the state ed department. This memo is actually addressed to parents, not to schools, not to superintendents, to parents. Never saw that before. So that caught my eye right away. Like, wow, this is big. What's this all about? One of the attachments in the memo are some suggested questions from the state education department that a parent can ask their committee. Wow. So let's take a look at these. What progress has my child made towards the standard? So learning standards are basically a description of typical expectations for kids, and they're organized by grade level. So for example, at the end of 9th grade, students typically should be able to do this and know this. And so that's all laid out for all the grades. So it's really important that we talk about, in relation to the typical expectation for, let's say, Eric's in 9th grade, for a 9th grader, what progress has my kid made towards that? Are we getting closer? Are we way off? Is there no way? We're surpassing it. That tells us a lot. If we're close, then whatever we're providing must be working really well. Let's keep it going. If the child is really not making progress, even close to what we would like, well, all right, why not? Let's really get into this. What are the obstacles? What would it take to move in that other direction? Like literally, what will it take? And then let's start recommending those kinds of supports. It's important at the table that we explicitly put out what is it that my child does well and what do they struggle with. So strengths and challenges. You have to have both. It's not all bad and it's not all good, or otherwise we wouldn't need to have this meeting, right? There's some things that need to be addressed and there's a lot of good stuff going on. Balance the two. What gets in the way of my child meeting those standards, or gathering those skills? What specifically are the roadblocks? So Stacy talked a few minutes ago about some of Eric's challenges, executive functioning. He has some rigidity in his behavior, things like that get in his way educationally. Okay, so we can work with that. Now that we're aware of it, we can work around it. As a parent, though, I need to know what you guys are seeing at, the school people. What are you seeing? I know what I'm seeing at home. What are you seeing? And then I have some ideas about what we can do to overcome those obstacles. Specifically, what will you provide my child? Right? What subjects is he taking? What are the methodologies you use to teach him? Oh, you talk at him a lot. He needs a visual to accompany what you're saying. If you don't have the visual, he's not going to pick it up. So do both, right? As one example of something that he needs that works for him. So, as parents in this day and age, everything's Google now, Google Classroom. Stacy's always looking for a textbook. There is no textbook. It's online. Eric knows where it is. All right, but how can I help him use that online textbook? That's become something that we've worked on, and we do pretty well with that. How is he tested? Well, he needs a little extra time. Are you giving him the extra time? Yes, we are. Okay, good. So we feel confident that his results are reflective of his abilities. And then who's responsible for implementing the supports, the instruction? Like who exactly? So I need to know who I can talk with. Who can I get some updates from? Who can I share my concerns with? Who can I share my ideas with? But who exactly, right? Specifically, you form these relationships with your children's educators, and now you have a stronger team. We actually work together. We have a relationship. So I find these questions are really useful. The very first time I read them, I'll be honest, I was a little like, oh boy, these are like gotcha questions, right? Because I know teachers struggle with progress monitoring. And then I was like, well, no, of course that's not what they are. And then it hit me. This is how your meeting should go. This is what your chairperson should be sort of prepared to go through. If you're not asking the question, they should answer it for you. So how are we doing in terms of the learning standards? Oh, so now we're going to go into that conversation. So this is really actually excellent guidance for how to proceed through IEP meetings. I'm going to show one more here. To the next page. Similar idea. These are questions for your child's teacher. And again, in the service of creating a relationship, promoting, progress. How is my child doing in comparison to other kids? How are you monitoring progress? How do you know how things are going? Tell me about his strengths. Tell me about their challenges. What additional supports might really be needed based on what we know now? What kind of strategies do you use in the classroom? And I'll use some of those at home. Are they effective? And then it promotes the idea of regular communication between parents and teachers. And as a parent, what can I do to support my child at home? Again, I find these questions very good guiding questions. It builds a relationship between parents and teachers. It shares some of the responsibility, but it gets to some specifics. Teachers are kind of like scientists too. They need to really know exactly what's going on and adjust accordingly. So I know that was a little bit geeky in terms of, I'm looking at a memo for guidance. Yeah, actually, this is a good one. This really gives us some good guidance. So, in terms of finding your voice, a parent can use these questions or similar questions to know what to ask about. And that's kind of why I wanted to put this together. Okay. Just got a few more items here. Besides being a member of the committee as a parent, the committee structure allows for another role called the additional parent member. A parent can ask the district to provide them with an additional parent member. That's a request that's made in writing to the district. It requires 3 days notice to give the district an opportunity to be able to provide that person. Stacy has been a parent member in our district. The role of this person is to provide the perspective of a parent of a child with a disability. I've been through this myself. I know what this is like. I know what these meetings are like. I can help you, parent, participate in this meeting. I'll ask questions for you. I'll help you ask questions. I'll pass you the tissues, whatever you need from me. That person can provide it. Go ahead, Say.
I just want to reiterate that it's really important that parents understand this particular role has to be requested. This used to be a mandated part of the CSE or CPSE meeting. They were required to outreach to a member in the community that was trained as a parent member and bring that voice to the table to be a listener, and then maybe a bit of an informant and maybe somebody to encourage some of those questions you were suggesting to be asked. But it's no longer mandated. So I just want to really make the point home that parents should always ask for a parent member. It's great to have another perspective at the table. And I think it's a very important role. Thank you.
Thanks, Say. On the bottom of the slide, I put a footer. This is taken from the State Education Department's publication called The Guide to Quality IEP Development and Implementation. This is what we use in our training. This is what guides how IEPs are developed when teachers develop them. This is good for parents as a resource as well. Actually, when if there's a copy of this PowerPoint that gets sent out, that document is linked in my title here. This definition comes from that publication. It's a great resource to understand how IEPs are actually supposed to be put together. Pretty easy to understand, equally good resource for parents. So, which brings me to one of my, I got a few more slides, but kind of wrapping up here. Here are some very good resources for parents for basic understanding of the IEP development process, how the meetings work. So the first one is the memo that I showed you those questions from just a couple minutes ago. The second one is that companion memo. This talks a little bit more about how special education and the Committee on Special Education works with learning standards. That's an interesting read to understand how that works. And then again, what I just mentioned, the Guide to Quality IEP Development and Implementation. So just to wrap up, I just want to tell you a little bit more about their educational partnership, just to kind of give a little more sense of, so who are these folks and what do they do? There are teams of people like me and my group all across the state, in addition to what are known as the FACE centers, Family and Community Engagement Centers. Years back, our network had what were known as the parent centers. They've kind of morphed into these family and community engagement centers. And the thing that we have in common, these two groups within the larger network, is we provide trainings and support to not just educators, but families. What does this mean? How does this work? What should I do? What can I ask? The FACE centers in particular do that, and they're split up into centers for preschool parents and also school-age parents. Right, so again, I pulled some official blurbs from the State Ed website to kind of describe what our groups do. A lot of emphasis on family and community engagement in our work because parents are such critical partners. We want them to be able to be those partners. Knowledge is power. So everybody chance just to kind of gaze on these couple of points. And so to go along with this, I provided some contact information. The Mid-Hudson RPC, that's my group. So I added my name. This is actually my boss's name at the top. Beth Pogue is our early childhood FACE Center representative. I work with her actually fairly regularly. And Syra Ayala is also with the FACE Center for school age. The FACE Center is actually located in Valhalla at the Westchester Medical Mega Complex down there. They serve both the Mid-Hudson region, our 4 counties, and the lower Hudson, Putnam, Westchester, Rockland as well. I can't recommend the FACE Centers enough to parents that are trying to learn more, trying to help find their own. These folks can really provide you with support, information, and really help you to literally find your voice. Okay, and that brings a conclusion to my presentation. I hope that gave you some different perspectives, some insight on some available resources. There's so many more resources. I came more from the state education department perspective, but again, we use those resources a lot, find them to be pretty effective. So thank you.
No, thank you. Yes, thank you for sure. Wonderful presentation. So as you're walking through this, a couple things come to mind. First of all, so rich with information. The interesting thing is that, Peggy and Lisa come to the table and they look at it from different perspectives, different platforms. One person is from the lived experience. The other one is representing, the experience from the school administrative position. And here you are blending both. I mean, you're not only a parent, but you're navigating, the system. And, the benefit to the parents is true. And the benefit to because Lisa always gives the example, which I love, is that Lisa's very bright. Lisa's very competent. Lisa's very prepared. And then she opens up that door to the special ed, to the IEP meeting, and Lisa, like other parents, walk in and there's 6 or 7, administrators there, or the school psychologist or whatever, and they freeze. And, it's like you're, the point that you want to make sometimes. And this idea of the parent companion being able to help, being able to give voice, because look, it's easy to talk about somebody else, but when it's your own kid, it's a whole different head. I mean, it's a whole different head giving voice for the benefit of your child. What Elaine and I, I just want to say this, what Elaine and I typically do is, we'll put this video up on our digital platform, and we'll put it in, on the YouTube thing. But I'm going to ask you specifically if you could send us that PowerPoint separately as well, not just embedded in this video, because I really think there would be a value if we put it up as a separate standalone, document on the. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'll be happy to do that. So I'm snickering because I have that experience too. The first meeting I went to, I actually brought one of my chairperson training binders with me because I'm ready. If this thing starts veering off course, I'm all over it. I sit down and I'm like, hum it. Like, it just went all right out the window because it was our child. And it's amazing how the most well-educated, confident person suddenly transforms because of the emotional nature of, my child now. So yeah, Larry, I had that same experience many times. I think it's gotten better for me. And actually, with our committee, the people that we work with in our school district, we've kind of found a rhythm now. Although he's in high school now, so it's going to be new characters. We have to kind of reestablish a little bit, but it's not so much. I don't feel like I have to feel the way I used to so much. I get that anxiety of like, we have to go in there and fight. And that rarely happens, actually. Mostly it's like, well, yeah, I guess they kind of suggested what we wanted. Like, who knew that was going to happen? A few tweaks here and there, but it's more comfortable now. We feel confident. We have a good relationship. Things move smoothly, good outcomes.
What I'd like to do from the perspective of Peggy and Lisa is maybe if you could provide some summary, acknowledgement of, some summary points. I mean, Brian did an incredible job with the wealth of information. And now the two of you, in the role of facilitators, Lisa, we're definitely going to do that exercise, the mindfulness exercise, because it's such a value. And every one of these video casts, we've done that. But the fact is, each of you come from a different perspective, so you can totally identify with Brian from the school administrative, navigation, also from the parent. And Peg, I hope you don't mind if I mention this, but Peggy is she's doing an incredible job trying to keep our dog quiet, okay, in the background. You're doing an incredible job of that. So from Lisa and Peggy, comments, reactions?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Brian. And I made a bunch of notes. What struck me is, especially as what I learned as a parent, is to trust your gut. And I think that's a good lesson in life in general, but especially with your child, is to trust your gut. And find someone you can trust. Sometimes it could even be one person, a teacher, a therapist, even a doctor. Find somebody that you can trust to help you navigate the system. I think that could be really beneficial. How to ask questions, how to ask questions. Also really, really important what you said, Brian, and finding your voice. Of course, I had that same experience in the beginning, like I had told Larry a while ago, of just freezing. When your emotions start to come up, it's a game changer. And to prepare, mindfulness is a way to prepare how to deal with those emotions and how not to squash them, but to understand where they're coming from, and then how to work with them and not be overwrought with them when you're in a meeting. So I think that's a really, really important, mindfulness can do that. And, accept who you are. When you walk in that meeting, you learn a lot about yourself, but you can only start from where you are. So accept that where you are, and, use the resources that you have and the people that you meet to help you understand the system, whatever you need to understand it. Like you said, if you need to hear it again, say it again until you're clear with what you're hearing. And don't be afraid to ask for support. Stacey, we've talked about this, parent support groups, without question, one of the most important things you can do as a special ed parent, if a parent with, special needs child, is get a parent support group. And, also learning, and what you said, Brian, so true. The parent who sits around that table with all those administrators is an equal partner, not 30%, not 20%, but you are as equal as any person sitting around that table. And that's a really important thing to acknowledge, and not to be afraid to use your voice. But isn't that a great thing to do in life anyway? Learn how to use your voice. So as we just sort of get sometimes pushed a little bit from behind, as a special needs parent. And knowledge is power. Yeah, just stay curious, stay aware, stay curious. So thank you.
May I add something?
Yes, please,
Hello.
Patty.
Sorry, I didn't make it home on time. So I love that what you all are saying. And the one thing that caught my eye was learning the system, to be part of the system, to be able to change the system. When my daughter was diagnosed, I'm an early childhood advocate. I've been an advocate for the health and welfare of children all my life. And what I did notice, my daughter's now 15 and autistic. I got my master's in autism studies and applied behavioral analysis. I left my job, got my master's. I went to rights law conferences. I've done everything I possibly can to equip myself. And I cannot inculcate that to parents enough, because the more we know, the more prepared we'll feel in those meetings. In the beginning, I was riddled with anxiety. I couldn't even talk. I would sweat through my clothing. And it's not fair for our children and us. And what I tell all the parents, you're gonna have to learn an entirely new career if you're a special needs parent. You really wanna take in all these different knowledgeable things and go to all the conferences that you can go to. You will always learn something new. Today, the first thing I learned new was that memo that you guys spoke of that indicated that the memo was for parents, not educators. We have a right. We are the primary members of that committee. I walk into my committee and I'm like, we are following my agenda. I ask questions, but I want to follow my agenda the way I want it, because this is my daughter and I'm the one with the highest amount of investment in this committee. So I really thank you all that you are literally repeating the things that we all need to really learn, because we have to equip ourselves. And there are really great things and resources out there that we could definitely use. And they're parent friendly, they're layman friendly, because it's disheartening to say that we have to learn a completely different language when we're at a CSE or CPSE meeting. Because if we don't use the proper language and the proper vernacular, we won't get what we need for our children, not for us, but for our children.
Well, thank you, Patty. Peg, comment from the other side of the desk. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh, okay. Am I mute now?
No.
Okay, good. I get that confused. From the school point of view, I think it's very important that parents participate and become active members in the committee. And I've worked elementary through high school, and that kind of wanes sometimes with parents. They kind of, I guess, feel maybe comfortable at the later stages, the secondary stages, and sometimes they don't even participate in the meetings at all. So I think if I could say anything, just to reiterate what you said, Brian, and that you are a member and a necessary member, and you do know your child better than I would ever know your child after 6 or 7 hours a day. So I think everybody brings important information and a strength to the table, and everybody has to have that voice. But I do think that the more parents understand and know, and more knowledge that they have, the better prepared they are to understand just the direction of the educational system.
So before I ask Lisa to give us an example, and here, you've always talked about, technique. Now I'd like you to put it into setting. So there you are as a parent, ready to open the door to that special ed meeting. Or there you are as a parent sitting at the table while everyone is gathering. When we first ended up doing this training, one of the things that we talked about a lot, and then COVID hit, and then we had to reassemble and pivot. Wouldn't it be great if every IEP meeting started with a moment of meditation? It would just change the whole atmosphere. Brian mentioned it, about the conflict and going into fight, but not necessarily having to. I have friends that go into fight and they fight it through. And sometimes that fight ends in that classroom, and sometimes that advocacy or discussion ends in a courtroom or in front of a special hearing officer, depending on how far the parent and the family wants to take it. So before I ask you to do that, Lisa, are there any other comments as we summarize this? But Brian, outstanding job. Really, really nice job. Any other comments from anyone?
I just like what Patty said. It's her agenda. It's your child is the star of the show. So you are the one that knows your child the best of anybody sitting in that room. So your voice is so important in that meeting. So yeah, thank you, Patty.
Yes, Stacy.
I am always in agreement with Lisa's comments. I guess it's the parent mindset too. And I tout my hat to my fellow parents. I've learned a lot from teachers, a lot from therapists, but often my best and most favored lessons have been from other parents, including Lisa. So thank you for empowering me over the years. We met many years ago when our kids were younger, and some of the lessons, that we talk about are still important to me today. A final comment I'll have is, not only do you need somebody, I think it was you, Lisa, that said you need somebody as a go-to person, whether it's a member of your medical team or maybe an educator or a therapist. I think being able to say your messages and have confidence in who you're speaking to. My mother-in-law comes to mind, and she's on with us tonight. Mom, thanks for joining us. You need a good listener, right? Sometimes you just need somebody to listen. You just need to share a story. Getting some feedback can be great, but sometimes it's just, in the moment, you want to just share some bits. And so having someone to be able to roll out and be your listener, I think, is also very valuable. So thank you, Mom, for being my listener for so long.
And Ramona, we're so glad you're here. She did show up at the beginning with this big sign that said, "I am the proud mother of the presenter tonight." Okay.
I didn't see that.
We're so glad that you are here. Kaylee's, any comments? Clifford, Patty, Elaine?
Okay, I'll just make a comment. As I attend these training sessions, I just have to say that I'm awestruck. Awestruck by the quality and the quantity and the commitment. I did very much like this discussion of advocacy, because that's part of what I do professionally in another profession. But it's so very wonderful to hear. And I did want to tell Brian and Stacy that yes, you guys were chosen because it's the level of dedication and the commitment that you have taken to bring your child to where he is. And I just, so much so, I want to meet him. He sounds like a wonderful person to meet. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for giving us this wonderful education.
He's also the resident artist, the artist resident, because of the fact he did the logo for the Peggy and Lisa Corner on our website. So yes, so Clifford, you had your hand up?
Yeah, first, thank you so much. I work with a municipality, and we have a disability task force, and we have like 60 different partners. Would I be able to share any of your videos with the community?
You would be able to share every one of our videos. I mean, we have the proactivecaring.org, digital resource center website. Elaine Sproat is here. She's a tremendous contact. But yes, I mean, that's the idea, is to be able to circulate this. And everything that's on there, Clifford, is a free download.
That's awesome. Because the thing is, like, I'm thinking about things aren't back in person yet, and we're doing so much things virtually. But I think this kind of thing we'd love to do in person, so we get interaction. I'm wondering if I could check with a library and see if they want to host it.
Absolutely. Look, any way that we can further our reach, please, and our voice, please.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you're making a big difference. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for your comment. Anyone else as we bring this to close? Okay, so Lisa, here we are. We're standing outside the doorway.
Here we are.
We're sitting at the table. What tools or resources or exercise could you recommend to a parent prior to opening up that door, or now they're sitting at the table?
Well, you say we say knowledge is power. And I think one thing that's really important to understand with the way our own minds work, when you're under a tremendous amount of stress, as soon as like walking into the room, seeing everybody there, getting ready, when our stressors are triggered, we lose the ability to connect well with our thinking brain. We go into a stress overload, and all those stress hormones are coursing through us, And one of the things it does for us is so we can, go into fight, flight, or freeze, but it disconnects from our thinking brain. But there's a solution for that. And the solution is to hack into our nervous system. I talk about this all the time, and we can do that through our breath. Because if you just take a few, and preparing for this, learning how to do this ahead of time, you could do this before walking into the meeting. And by using your breath to calm your nervous system, you will be able to connect to that thinking brain, and you'll be able to be more calm and less reactive, and be able to sit in the meeting and also to absorb it. Sometimes, like when you're there, it's important to have support sometimes because there's so much said, you can't remember it all. And you're trying to take notes. So it's also a really good thing to have somebody with you, or at least, I don't know if they'll let you record it now, or to at least have that support. So we can do that right now. We can do a little exercise. And I would recommend this even when you're sitting in your car before you walk into your meeting, and just to connect. So I'm sitting. I naturally will start to close my eyes to connect, to kind of rule out the outer world, the visual world. I'm trying to get into my body more. I'm trying to get out the swirl of my head. And what I want to do is connect myself to my body. So I can start that by taking a nice deep inhale through my nose. And take a nice long exhale through my mouth, like I'm blowing out a candle. And I can do that again. I can inhale. And I can listen to my body. Because the body will reflect what's going on in your mind, and vice versa. If you're stressed and anxious, that's going to show up in your body. So I can sit, I can take some exhales, nice long exhales, and I can just do a check. Make sure my jaw is not clenched. Relax my eyes. Make sure my shoulders aren't hunched up and tense. Take another exhale. And feel that breath in my body. Feel where I'm in contact with the chair. My hands on my legs, even just, I can even rub my hands together to feel that heat. My hands on my knees, just to connect to the body, feel my feet on the floor. Connect to your senses. Find that calm. Just take a nice, another long exhale. And you can even talk to yourself. Say, I know, I understand anxiety wants to come. I understand that I'm feeling nervous. I know this is the anxiety coming. But that's okay, because I'm walking into a stressful situation. But I can connect to my breath. And I can calm my nervous system. And I can walk into the meeting fully functional and ready to be an advocate for my child. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you all. The focus is transitions. The focus and our unique fingerprint is mindfulness-based stress reduction. And I think we've done a wonderful job. Corinna, you have your hand up. You're muted right now. Let me just.
That's an applause.
I saw hands.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you, everyone.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us. And as I've indicated to people offline, that Corinna's joined us as a social work intern from Columbia. And thanks to Sharon Mary Cohen for making this connection. And off we go. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. And everyone, please be well.